All right. So again, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy that you're here. This is such a great amount of numbers we're seeing in attendance. So please, please join in the discussion after his presentation. The best way to do that is to use the Q&A, which is a feature of the webinar down at the bottom of your screen. You can also chat in the chat box, which I already see people are chatting in. Thank you so much. And we're going to collect your questions during his presentation to best get to as many as possible as soon as he's done with his amazing presentation. At the end, we're going to offer you a survey to just give us some feedback briefly, if you wouldn't mind. It takes less than 2 minutes. So again, thank you everyone so much for being here, and I'm going to pass it off to Steve.
Thanks, Wayne. Well, I'm very happy to be here. I want to thank everyone for joining in tonight. My name is Steve Parker. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a board member of Thrive, which is our community mental health center that sponsors this Thrive Talk series. Normally, obviously, these presentations take place in person within our community, but these days, doing it in cyberspace has allowed us to reach a much wider audience. There are people here from Washington State to Southern California, and from Maine to Georgia, and all in between. So I did a lot of bribing and a lot of hand twisting to get people to join. So when I give these talks to an audience, I'm usually able to hear laughter when I eventually say something funny. I'm also able to see people and get a sense of whether or not they're following along or they have some questions. But in this format, it's kind of like I'm standing in front of my bathroom mirror talking to myself for an hour, which is what I do every day anyway. So this is going to be a snap. Anyway, so what I'll do to entertain myself during this talk is to imagine that anytime I say something I think is funny, I'm just going to picture, let's see, we have 172 people here so far. I'll just picture you guys all laughing. And if I say something that's of importance, I'll just imagine you guys all nodding your heads in agreement. So as the song, What's Going On, was asking, Marvin Gaye's great song, what is going on? You know, one of the things that's become very clear is that we do not know how to disagree. I am right and you are wrong has become the mantra in this country. We are living in historic and unprecedented times. One of the things about these times is I have finally learned how to spell unprecedented. And I have used unprecedented an unprecedented amount of times. We all know that the onset of this the disruption was so swift and instantaneous around the whole world at the same time. I mean, think about this. You can go anywhere in the world for the rest of your lives, no matter what your age, and you will have something in common with every human being on earth. In the furthest corners of this earth, you now have something in common. And yet, we are more alienated, polarized, embattled, angry, fearful, hateful, violent society. We've become ugly. We are children fighting on the playground. And along with this accelerated struggle and opposition is a disintegration of our principles, values, honesty, truthfulness, integrity. What I've been talking about is it's almost as if there's been like a repressed indecency has been released. There used to be that people had filters, but it's like there are no filters now. There are no conversations, no one is listening, no one is heard, and consensus is absolutely impossible. We are really engaged in a national name-calling shouting match. We are entrenched in positions that will never align. I am right and you are wrong. You know, we have a sports mentality, which is an unquestioning loyalty to our teams. And that's what polarization is. It's rooted in the inflexible adherence to an ideology. We are battling over ideologies. It's a win-lose struggle that is deteriorating our society and our culture. So as a family therapist, I want to talk to you tonight from that perspective. And I've given this a lot of thought. I mean, I am extremely overbooked. People know it's very hard to get in to see me. But I have to tell you that after much thought and much consideration, I have decided that I would take humankind on as my client. When I work with a family, in the beginning, I used to listen to the stories. Somebody would tell me that somebody didn't do this enough or somebody did that. And I would get into these negotiations around the stories. And maybe with a little luck, we would settle that one problem. But 2 weeks later, they'd be back and they'd be fighting again, over and over again, kind of the same struggles. And when I finally realized that what I needed to learn was how to analyze the interactional patterns and the experiences that were created by these patterns, how people interacted with each other. It's kind of like looking at families much more from an anthropological perspective, like the study of culture. And what I have learned over the years is that there are certain similar qualities and characteristics of relationships that foster families to thrive. And there are similar qualities and characteristics that foster struggle. Habitual patterns of interaction form that either encourage conflict or peace. I help families see that if they continue to do what they are doing, they will continue to have what they have. It is a no change contract. Nobody changes. The only thing that does happen is that the problem tends to occur more frequently. And I always say that people continue to use the same strategies over and over again that never work, except more frequently and louder. It's not the issues that perpetuate the problem. It's how they talk about the issues that is the problem. The issues cannot be more important than the relationship. And when I look at our society this way, there are structures that are operating in our culture that is creating the experience that we have. And I would tell you that the single most defining characteristic of struggle in families, and we see it in this culture, is the position of stuck opposers. That is rigidly adhering to a view, feeling very justified, righteous, judgmental. I am right and you are wrong. It's a battle of ideologies. It's a battle of beliefs, perspectives, and realities. And we will never align with these perspectives and ideologies. They are mutually exclusive. It just fosters a win-lose battle. And in families, it's a lose-lose for the family. And we are certainly seeing that is a lose-lose for our culture and our society. You know, one of the things that has become so clear to me, that when you are in this stuck opposing position, the issues actually become secondary. The power struggle to be right, to defend one's position, is what becomes primary. The relationship is always sacrificed, as is peace and harmony. There will never be negotiation, compromise, agreement. It cannot happen when people are in stuck opposing positions. We are adversaries and we are enemies. So, what have I learned in my 40 years as a marriage and family therapist? In all chronically conflictual relationships, there is one single ingredient, one primal need that is always missing. It's always absent. And in all mutually beneficial relationships, it is always present. And that is respect. I can just hear Aretha singing it now. But I am not talking about respect as a social etiquette, as a politeness. I am talking about respect as a primal need. When first humans began to wander this earth, respect meant acceptance. Acceptance meant belonging. And with belonging, you could be part of a community. You had membership in a community, and then you would survive. If you didn't have respect and weren't accepted, you could not belong, and you would be cast out, and you would die alone. And so we have this primal need to be respected, to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. In conflictual relationships, the primary need that is activated is the need to protect, the need to defend, to survive. You know, when I watch couples struggle, I see two people feeling threatened, attempting to protect themselves. You know, when you watch in all species, in all animals, when there is danger and people feel threatened, they get bigger, they get louder, they try to scare their enemy, or they shrink and hide or camouflage. It's like we get engaged in a Maori war dance, pounding our chests. It's fear-driven. And when things are fear-driven, there is no creativity, and solutions never are the result of this. And this is what's happening in our culture today. We are feeling unsafe. We are feeling vulnerable. We are feeling threatened. We are on high alert to protect ourselves. I will tell you this. All relationships improve when respect becomes part of the relationship. All relationships improve. Without respect, we won't ever come together to solve problems. We will only have more problems. We will only engage in more and more struggle. Respect is what is sacrificed in our struggles. We are so issue-focused that we don't see the other as a person. It's so important that we understand that arguing without being respectful is only going to result in conflict and struggle. This is really important here, that the outcomes of our conversations are not what is our biggest problem. We are not having conversations. A conversation is a balance between listening and talking. The problem is the way that we engage. It's what keeps families in struggle, and that's what is preventing us from moving forward as a society and as a culture. We are not hearing each other, and we are not having any conversations. Our rituals of struggle are preventing new ideas from emerging from our differences. Instead of connecting to create a more mutually beneficial existence for all, we are engaged in a self-destructive process for ourselves and for our very existence on this earth. The time to awaken to that is now. The time for us to awaken to what we are creating is now. So I've been giving this a lot of thought. That the real problem is really that we have stopped seeing each other as human beings. We demonize and dehumanize the other. The worst scenarios of dehumanization has been slavery, Nazi Germany and the Holocaust, Rwanda, all of the atrocities that have been part of humankind's development. It's warfare psychology. You have to not see the other as a person. You have to just see them as the enemy. Imagine what it would be like if you were a soldier and you were about to take a life of somebody and you were thinking about the family that is going to be grieving, the loss, the the effect it's going to have on all those that love that person. It'd be kind of hard to have a war when you are very conscious of the other person as a human being. And so we really at a time where we have to awaken to the other as a human being. That is so essential. So I want to confess my awakening. I was wishing death on people. I was wishing for people to die. You know, in my generous times, if there was a rally, I would wish for only half to die, and then the other half just to get sick. And the crazy thing, when I would say that trying to be a little bit humorous, so many people said, me too. I'm wishing people would get the virus and die also. And it really awakened me to how low I had gotten. It's like, wow, I can't believe I'm really actually wishing for people to die. And it was in those moments that I realized I was no different than those I was condemning. It became so clear to me that as my dehumanizing of you, of the other, was really dehumanizing myself also. And then it became very clear, once I started to think of people as human beings, as people with feelings, I realized that I hold on to my beliefs and perspectives for the same reason you hold on to yours. We truly believe this is what would be best for my family, for me, and for our country. We really all really want that. We really are so much alike. And we completely miss that in our struggles and battles over our ideologies, our perspectives. If I am not willing to listen to your perspective, why would I believe you would be willing to listen to mine? When I work with families, I always tell people, you have to be the partner you wish your partner to be. You have to be the people you want your children to be. And it became very clear that I had to be the person that I want the other to be. I want to read my most read quote with a few modifications. I wonder if you ever change human beings with arguments alone, either by peppering them with sharp facts or by blowing them up with great guns of truth. You scare them, but do you change them? I wonder if you ever make any real differences in human beings without understanding them and respecting them. For when you argue with a person, you are somehow trying to pull them down and make them less and yourself more. But when you try to understand them, when you like them, how eager are they then to know the truth you have? There is nothing in the world that people so much thrive upon, grow fine and rosy and robust upon, as being respected. So, what do we need to, where we're going with this? Humans are a very young species on this earth. If the earth were 24 hours old, human beings appeared seconds before midnight. Of all the species on this earth, humans are the only ones who mistreat each other, mistreat themselves, and mistreat our host, Mother Earth, the way that we do. We're the only ones that live in such disharmony. If we were to think of humans along a human developmental model, we function somewhere between the ages of 3 and 7. We are like children fighting on the playground. Reactivity continues to be the go-to response, particularly to anyone who challenges our beliefs. It's reactivity and no creativity. And without any creativity, there will be no solutions. You know, we lack as a culture developmentally that ability to harness those human qualities that would create a kinder and more respectful world. We are not maximizing the human potential to doing something better. We are capable of so much more. We want to tap into the full range of our human potential that includes our enormous capacity for love, for kindness, for generosity, to care, comfort, and nurture others. These are our primal instincts too. That is human nature also. We see it during disasters. People are so sacrifice themselves to help others, come to the need and aid of people. It is one of the most beautiful things to see the way people join in to take care of each other. I can assure you that if you were found hurt on the street, nobody is going to ask you what political party you belong to. That primal instinct to care and comfort is immediately activated. And so we have to become aware, do we mature as a society in which the creative problem-solving abilities are harnessed so that we can maximize discussion and create a process that encourages solutions rather than what we do now? We now perpetuate the struggle, the suffering, and the alienation in the way that we engage about our issues. It's the same thing that would have to happen in a family to improve. We have to become much more awake about that. And for that to happen, we have to mature as a culture. We, the human species, are in need of a developmental leap. And for this to happen, it has to start with me, and it has to start with you. All my talks are about a call for action. Insight without action isn't change. So let's step back for a second and look at this pandemic. Throughout human development, there have been so many milestone events that have occurred along the course of human development, right? All of these milestone events have moved humankind in different directions. Many have been for the better, but we do need to become very awake to this point. What we have is the result of all of our milestones until now. This pandemic is a milestone. We have definitely earned a notch on that yardstick of human development. 2020, there's a mark. And so we need to wake up. And when I ask the question, do you like what you see happening? Everyone I know, and I would almost say everyone, thinks these are troubling times. Like in families I work with, if no one is willing to change, then nothing changes. It only gets worse. And we right now are not headed in a better direction. And so we do need to move our culture towards being a kinder and more respectful society. So I want to ask you for a moment, if we were doing this in person, I would put on some meditative music and I would have you close your eyes. Imagine you are looking back to the time of the pandemic from 100 years into the future. Imagine that, you're 100 years into the future. What is the story you want told about humankind's response to the pandemic? Think about that for a moment. How do you want history to report how humankind was affected by this pandemic? And then think, how will I live my life now so that I am contributing to that story coming true? Will it be a story of increased polarization? I talk to people that are fearful we're about to have a civil war. several weeks ago, a militia was going to kidnap a governor. Unheard of things have already been happening. Or will it be the story of a developmental leap in which humankind really learned to live in peace and harmony, creating a society that is mutually beneficial for all? And so I started to think, so what am I going to do? You know, what can we really do? So I just want to introduce you to the notion that is rooted in Buddhist thought. It's the notion of the bodhisattva. It's the peaceful warrior. The bodhisattva is the spirit that lives with the conscious intention of bringing peace and calm and respect in all interactions with any human. That if we live with the intention to see the humanness in all beings, we increase the possibility that we can have that, the conscious intention to continue to be respectful, regardless of what people feel or think. It's embracing, as Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, said, peace in every step. The key to this was me recognizing I have to accept that responsibility. I will be the one that brings respect in any of my interactions with another person, even if you don't. In the Bodhisattva tradition, being respectful is not being weak. Being respectful doesn't mean agreement, and disrespect means disagreement. It is not placating to be respectful. You do have a strong voice. If I am respectful to you and you are rude and disrespectful to me, I can say very respectfully that I don't want to continue in this conversation. So how do you do that, right? Sort of the steps in the art of disagreeing. Well, for me, it was a decision that I needed to awaken. I needed to become aware. And if there's one thing that can come out of this conversation tonight, is that some of you will begin to become aware of what you are contributing in this world now, what you contribute to the cultural narrative that we are experiencing. I decided that it was time for me to change. I'm not waiting for anyone else to change. The time was for me to change. And for that change to occur, it requires becoming conscious, intentional, and mindful, very deliberate. So here are some specific things to keep in mind. I have to accept 100% responsibility for how I act, how I feel, and how I think. We are not taught this. One of the cultural narratives, which is the beliefs that have been handed down from one generation to the next, is that you do have the power to determine how I feel, how I think, and how I act. We're taught that as kids. When our parents say, if you did your homework, I wouldn't yell at you. Basically, it's saying, me yelling at you is not my responsibility. Me yelling at you is your responsibility. This is one of the great problems in our cultural teachings. It is essential that I will accept 100% responsibility. And I don't blame you for making me sad, angry, disappointed, happy or proud. Acting respectfully toward a person doesn't mean that you respect them or agree with them. I want to emphasize that again. Acting respectfully toward a person does not mean you respect them. Being respectful is about me being the person I say I want to be. It's not about you at all. Without connection, there is only going to be struggle. Out of the School of Nonviolent Communication, Marshall Rosenberg talked about how me being kind and respectful to you is not dependent on you being kind and respectful to me. That as soon as people feel that they are treated rudely, disrespectfully, connection is broken and we are adversaries. It's anger and emotional reactivity that it will continue to prevent a connection. One of the other skills that I have to emphasize here is what it means to practice curiosity and not judgment. Curiosity allows you to gain insight into another person's thinking. That if I'm curious, I'm going to ask you questions. And if I ask you questions and I'm being respectful, you will feel heard, you will feel respected. But I must learn how to become immune to being offended. I do not take it personally. I'm not threatened by your beliefs. It is interesting to think, why, if you sit here and tell me that climate change is not happening, why would I get outraged? Why would I get angry about that? If I got curious, I could at least begin to learn what your thoughts are. And by me being curious and respectful to you, then I will be contributing positively to the cultural narrative. Because by me being respectful to you increases the possibility that you may become respectful to somebody else, but maybe not. And so it's important to remember, what am I contributing to this cultural narrative, to the way things are? And am I contributing to the narrative of how things are in the ways I would say I want? Okay, so this takes practice, right? And so where do you practice? The algorithms of our society, don't really line us up. I really do not know people who are flying the Confederate flag. And so we are in our bubbles in many ways. So the practice must take place in the seed of all communities. That's your family, with your friends, coworkers. But the family is the seed of all communities. It is where we learn how to treat each other. The family is the first community that anyone lives in. It's where we learn about love, kindness, and respect. It's where we learn how to discuss issues respectfully or not. Where we learn how to disagree, argue, negotiate, and come to a compromise, come to an agreement respectfully or not. How to express feelings and thoughts to each other, respectfully or not. How to be angry, disappointed, frustrated, respectfully or not. It's where we are taught about prioritizing the relationship over issues, or where we are taught that issues are more important than the relationship. So this cultural developmental leap that I'm talking about begins in the family. It is a multi-generational change, but it begins with us here now, awakening. When people grow up in that first community experiencing what I've been talking about, they will enter into the larger community of society with that as a fundamental experience and awareness. And when enough people begin to have that experience, our culture will change. In 1969, I was a freshman in college. The war was raging in Vietnam. There was the anti-war movement was at its peak. It was there that I was told the story of the 100th monkey. It was in response to people saying, well, what's my one little action going to do? And the story of the 100th monkey is that on an island in Japan, a monkey began to eat a sweet potato that it wasn't known in its diet. And eventually other monkeys began to eat that sweet potato. And the legend has it, when the 100th monkey began to eat that sweet potato, thousands of miles away on another island, monkeys began to eat that sweet potato too. With enough momentum, it will become fashionable to be respectful. By being aware that each interaction that reflects respect towards another invites the other to be respectful too. This momentum to bring about respect, truth, integrity will build the more that we begin to display that in our own lives towards people that we interact with. We will be able to co-create solutions to these problems we face as a society, regardless of our differences. Solutions will actually grow out of our differences, and humankind will be better for all of us. I think I'll stop here right now, ask Wynn to come back in, and we can start taking a look at some questions.
So Steve, I think I speak for everyone that I've been writing feverishly. I have so much to ask you myself, but I feel obviously beholden to the people that have already submitted questions. So is it okay if we just jump right in with the questions?
Yeah, only ask me questions I can answer.
Oh, geez.
See, now I'm picturing everyone is laughing. See, that's the way it works. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have any of those.
Okay.
But I do have a good one. You used the respect, probably that word 100 times. And I think you answered it in this wonderfully hopeful thing you just said about it's becoming fashionable, right? It will be fashionable to be respectful. But someone asked the question, is everyone truly worthy of respect, or is it something that must be earned?
I make the distinction. I don't have to respect you for me to be respectful. I am being respectful. Mm-hmm. Because that is my conscious intention of what I am contributing to this world. So there are people I don't respect. There are people who I will never agree with, but I can still treat them respectfully. Now, respectfully doesn't mean that I shrink and I don't have my voice. I could be very strong in my respect while setting limits and boundaries with somebody who is incredibly rude or disrespectful, or is voicing opinions and perspectives that I don't agree with. Right. But I'm not attacking them in a way that just increases the polarization and the struggle. The possibility of inviting somebody by being present to them and being respectful to them, and they feel heard, increases the possibility that they may actually be open for a conversation, but maybe not. But at least I held true to being the person I say I want to be. Yeah, I understand that. And speaking of, as what you're saying is you're modeling respect, right? I am being respect. That's me, the bodhisattva, that notion. I move through my life with the intention to be kind and respectful to anybody I engage with. Okay, so that leads into another question, if you're ready for the second question. Yeah. Sure. So someone said, if I offer myself as the model to start with me, as you're saying, right, that you're going to be the respectful one, doesn't that set me up for disappointment? They don't want to be like me, so the more I expect them to be like me, aren't I ignoring, their true nature? Well, I think the difficulty or the problem would be that I'm expecting somebody to be like me. Right. So I think that would be problematic. Right. And that means I'm wanting somebody to change. And this is a key point here. If the conversation is for me to change you, we're going to struggle. We're going to get into a power struggle. I will resist that. So my goal is not to make you believe what I believe, but I would like to share with you what I believe. And if we're open for a conversation, something new, something could actually grow out of that if we're having a conversation. Somebody said that anybody you meet has something you don't know. And I really like that idea. Yeah. So when you say is he setting himself up for disappointment, that's kind of something that you'd have a bigger conversation around.
as you're saying, it's your expectation that they are going to, is what's setting you up for disappointment.
And it's also saying that somebody else determines how I feel. If you
Love
don't
that.
behave, if you don't behave in the way I want, I'm disappointed. You didn't disappoint me.
Right.
I
Love
chose
that.
to be disappointed by what you've done. That's the distinguishing part here.
Love
That's
that.
the notion, yeah, of being immune to being offended.
Yeah. And as you said, it was like also realizing, like in the family structure, I've taken this away from your talks about how it's not my kid's job to manage my emotions and myself. And that's kind of going along with, I'm to model that. And that's how we're going to make the change.
Exactly. Exactly. It grows out of experience. Listen, children learn by what they experience, not by what they're told.
Yeah.
And, you know.
So one just popped up that's kind of like what we're talking about. Kathleen says, if you're trying to maintain a peaceful and respectful environment, right? So we're trying to be respectful and the discussion does become tense. How do, and you lose track of your respectful intentions, how does one get back on track, if possible, to have a conversation?
Well, you know, one of the things in my work with people is to begin to start paying attention to what's happening to them internally. And
Okay.
if you begin to feel your anger and you see you're going point and counterpoint, but you somewhere have been awakened to the notion of being mindful about that, I call it throwing your emotional circuit breaker. Just stop. I always say in relationships, it's really important to ask for a do-over. I realize I'm hooked. I realize I'm just really hot right now. Let me take a moment. Let me get back on track. Interrupt the escalating struggle. But you got to be conscious and intentional about that. Otherwise, you have people who are mirrors of each other escalating the struggle. So
I like
again,
that.
if I'm taking 100% responsibility for being the respectful one in this conversation,
Yes.
it really doesn't matter what's happening to you. I could say right now when I feel your judgment and your anger and I find myself
Oh, you
wanting
can
to
feel
pull back,
that right through the screen? Oh gosh, I'm
you
sorry.
know, we do pretty good, don't we? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Well, I don't even know what I was saying anymore, but it's okay. It's up to me to be conscious of what's happening to me.
Yeah.
If I keep reacting to you, reacting is acting again in the same way. People are not, okay, the difference between a reaction and a response has reflection. A response has pause.
Like that.
And choosing an action rather than just being emotionally reactive, which leads to struggle.
Yeah, I love what you said about I'm going to take responsibility, 100% responsibility to be respectful. And if I'm starting to feel that way, I'm going to throw the circuit breaker. What'd you call it?
The emotional circuit breaker.
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, it's just like I set the intention to be respectful and I take 100% responsibility to model that. And then when I feel myself losing it, I throw my circuit breaker. Right. Love it.
You know, I want to be clear. This takes mindfulness.
Yes.
And as I remind my clients, you put notes up. I mean, if I'm trying to change myself, my habitual patterns are so well established. I need reminders that I am changing. I need to keep cueing myself that I'm wanting to be different. And that's important.
So someone just threw up something around meditation. So I'll skip over here. Okay. That Steve, you are the man. Have you found meditation and or meta loving kindness practices with your clients to be useful to cultivate what you're talking about, the self-compassion and self-respect?
Yes.
And
yes. No, I mean, you know, there's a reason meditation's been around for thousands of years. And it is a discipline. And it is about becoming much more conscious, much more aware of your thoughts, learning how to disengage from thoughts and coming back to your breath. And as a practice in relationship, it's very, very important. So yeah, self-compassion is key to this, by the way. Anybody that wants to leave here tonight and try to do something differently, they're not going to do it well because they're habits.
Good point.
But you don't beat yourself up. I always say you're not going to hate yourself enough to love yourself more. You need to give yourself opportunities to change by developing an inner ally. Again, self-compassion is absolutely key to sort of changing yourself.
Yeah, I think you should put that on a t-shirt. What did you say? You're not going to hate yourself enough to love
Yourself more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, needs to be on a t-shirt. So again, one more question along the lines of modeling. Someone is actually asking, wouldn't you say that we're modeling the pundits or the news behavior that we're watching and our country leaders? And how do we change this? And I guess you're going to probably say the same thing, right? It starts with us.
It does. And, you know, I think it's important to filter what you are exposing yourself to. You know, interesting. I got to tell you, so I ride my bicycle around Michigan and Indiana. And before I became awake to how much I was wishing death on people, I would see signs for a political candidate that I was not supporting. And I would judge and feel venom for the people in those homes. And once I became awake to that, I really was able to check that. Now, the surge came, but the freeing of the anger and the hatred also came. And I think that is so important to acknowledge it's there, but then to free yourself from it, because it's conscious and deliberate to be free of that hatred. There's too much hatred, and I was contributing to that voice. And I still will, because this is not about perfection. But I am really encouraging, and hopefully out of tonight, people become much more awake and determined to be aware that what they put into this world affects the world. Mm-hmm. Like that monkey story.
Yeah.
We do change. You know, just think about this. When I went to college in 1969, the idea of gay and lesbian marriages, unheard of. Stonewall had just happened in June. A black president, I was told never in my lifetime. Recycling was a hippie thing. Marijuana being legal, going into downtown Oak Park to get your gummy, yeah. Unheard of, never gonna happen. And this is where I would throw up my picture of myself, but I'm not doing that. But anyway, change doesn't have to take generations, but the change we're talking about needs to start now, but it is a generational shift, and we have to mature. Our culture has to awaken.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that really personal thing about yourself. And I know you do that easily, but you know, your feeling about being on the bike and, you know, knowing that you're still having those same feelings, and that helps the rest of us, I think, understand our own feelings. No matter how much you meditate or how much you are woke, you still have to grapple with those things. But you have tools, and you're helping us understand those. So thank you. No. So along the lines of trying to improve ourselves, the very first question that came through is about somebody who, she said, I want to engage with people on Facebook when they post toxic, racist posts, specifically about public figures. And she tries to start out by saying something from the news or something that even she knows she shares in common with this person, you know, to help break the ice. And she's often told that she sounds condescending, and she wants to improve her approach around these conversations. So do you have some maybe tidbits for us? And I know there's another question about someone saying, how do I help my college-age child to remain open-minded within this diametrically opposed political views? So maybe you could help us with just a couple more tidbits.
Well, you know, one is you cannot change, the goal is to not change somebody.
Okay.
The goal might be you want to gain influence. You might want to offer some thoughts that others can ponder. That's possible.
Okay.
But you know, this position of curiosity, if you lead with curiosity by saying, for instance, you know, one of the stories I always tell in my talks is when I work with kids and teenagers who, you know, were very challenged behaviorally. And when this kid called me an F and A hole, I said, I'm really glad you told me that. I thought I was coming across as a really nice guy who cared about you, but clearly I'm not coming across the way I want. So I don't meet the challenge with a counter challenge. Curiosity is what allows you to learn more about their position. And if they, again, feel that you are hearing them, it increases the possibility that they may hear you. It's not guaranteed.
Gotcha.
But it increases that possibility. I don't know if that's really answering the question, but.
Yeah, no, because what you're saying is that a lot of time, like this person in particular is trying to, you know, instill some knowledge maybe, or her point of view. And what you're saying is first, it's about being curious and learning their point of view and taking that in as much as possible before they may be open to hearing you.
Right, right.
So it's that proactive, again, there's a lot of proactive things you're saying about being respectful and,
Right.
And curious. Okay.
Right. I see
So
somebody raising their hand. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
I know that guy. What's he want?
Do you want me to bring him on?
If he wants to.
All right. I can see if I can get him to talk.
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, and then there's a Frank. Well, see if Frank can come on. Frank and Donnie.
Yes.
Hey.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, how are you? You're going to have to turn yours off, honey. Hey, I don't know if I can see you or if I've done something wrong here, but we just want to say that Stephen Parker has made our lives better. And that's because we are active listeners and practicers of the things that he has brought into our lives.
Hello.
And that's our 10-year-old son, who we have really utilized a lot of these skill sets. I love the number one thing you talked about, which was we are responsible for our own feelings and our own emotions and how we react. And whenever we get upset, saying that to our son, saying, this is my reaction to this. You are not responsible for my feelings of frustration. I am. And we're just doing what's expected, and we have boundaries, and those are things we have to do, but just not putting that on a child. And I didn't really have that training when I was coming up, and I didn't have that modeling as an adult. So my wife,
certainly
Elise,
I didn't either.
yeah. So my wife, Elise, and I, and our son, Carter, we're just grateful for Stephen Parker and his work. And we just wanted to give you a shout out and say,
And we
thank you, guys. Oh, Elise and Frank. Hey, thank you.
It's funny. Frank's working in here, so he's in his office watching on one screen. I'm watching from the kitchen, and Carter was watching you on his computer in the other room. So we were all watching.
I know you're recording this, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, and you can take us off, but I don't know if you are, and I'm curious, this is something that I found basically coming through all the work that I've done with you, which was Stoicism. Work of the ancient Stoics, Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, being focused on the teachings of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. And it's really been helpful for me to use Stoicism whenever I get angry or have these things happen. You know, the Stoic teaching of hold something at a distance, analyze what it is, that you don't have to just choose either to get angry or happy, that you can have the choice of not having a reaction in any way, shape, or form. So I just thought I'd leave that there. Frank. And then,
you're much more an intellectual than I am. But that's, thank you.
You're welcome, man.
Great.
Thank you, guys. That was great to hear that.
That was sweet. I know that we're coming near an end, but I don't know if people want to ask more questions and stay a little bit longer. I'm open to that. I mean, I guess we'll see if people just start dropping out, but are there other questions or other people raising their hand? I don't know.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I just want to make sure. Okay. Someone saying first, thank you very much. I agree. It all starts with ourselves and differentiation of ideology and intrinsic value of personal relationships. However, it's difficult when our leaders constantly contradict our better selves. What do you tell yourself when you react emotionally? Emotional reaction is not valid. And there was someone else who asked something similar to that where, but I don't know if you'd like to speak more to that.
Well, as we become a kinder and more compassionate culture, we'll be electing leaders who reflect that. And I think
True.
that's part of the change that we're talking about. You know, the people that run for office, you know, are elected by us. And if we start to vet and make priorities around more of compassion and more mutual beneficial for all, to start to create more equality in our country and more respect and dignity for all, and we start to share all that's in this available to people, the political system will change, because we'll be putting people in there who are more awake. So it takes time.
Yeah.
You just have
Someone,
to it. Yes.
someone just threw in a question that I think about often. She says, how to maintain the respectful approach when the other news fact sources and our own are different. So like completely not overlapping, right? So my facts are completely different than yours. So how do you address these alternate realities, which I call competing realities, but this is from Nancy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, with curiosity. I mean, I could be outraged and think, how the hell could they possibly think that, and be filled with judgment? Or I could be very curious. It's like, wow, that is so different from the way I think. Again, I'm remembering it's a person, and I'm not letting the belief be the thing that turns me into an angry, hateful, judgmental person. And that takes checking. That takes being aware, because they have that belief. And as I was saying before, when you have battling ideologies, they're not going to ever come together. And if the battle is over whose ideology is correct, it is nothing but a struggle. Without connection, there is no conversation. You know, a conversation is a balance between listening and talking. And that is not happening. And so it's about engaging with people so that there is a connection. Without connection, there's only alienation and polarization.
Yeah. Can you answer another question? You have time?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think that fear plays into the lack of respect? Fear of the other, fear that the other doesn't know what will happen in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the primal instinct that's being triggered.
Yeah.
We are in fear. And when we're in fear, we defend, we protect. And as a result, once we're in fear, we don't access our heart. We don't access love, or kindness or respect. We are in a protective mode of survival. And that's our primal instincts kicking in. And, you know, fear is very, very, very powerful as a primal need. Yeah.
So some people are asking, like, can you give examples of how to ask a respectful question? Would like just a model again of just some more types of questions that may resonate.
Okay, well,
better.
I had an example of someone saying to me that Black Lives Matter was a terrorist organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what do you mean by a terrorist organization? And they said, an organization that is trying to change our society. And I said, oh, well, in that case, I could see why you're calling it a terrorist organization. But what is it that you are afraid the change? What is the change you are afraid of? And that opened up a conversation instead of me going, what?
Yeah.
It was my curiosity to move in that direction rather than to just meet it head on and challenge it. It's kind of like martial arts. Somebody throws a punch, you don't meet it with a punch. You move in the direction. And that's one of the ways to do that, is be curious. Because if I'm not offended, if I'm not taking it personally, I am able to access curiosity.
Yeah, well, and what I heard you just do was you actually picked out a word and you were curious about the word. You said, what do you mean by terror? Like, that's even a brilliant way to, you know, spin the conversation. Just be listening for, okay, so what did you mean by that? What does that mean to you? And then you were able to
that position of curiosity really allows you to define the terms so you know what you're talking about. A lot of the battles occur when people have not defined the terms.
Okay.
And
I like that.
they each have their own assumption about what the other one means because they're so busy fighting. They were immediately at odds with each other. Rather than open. Yeah.
So you're saying at some level when we hear certain words that trigger us, because some other people were asking about triggers, if we can stop for a second and just say, hey, I'm getting triggered in my mind by this word, but maybe the way they view this word is different than the way I view this.
That's
word.
right.
Okay.
But, you know, the other piece is that I call it commenting on the process. If you say something to me and I feel triggered, I could say things like, you know, I could feel that I was just about to jump down your throat and start to try to argue that point. I could feel myself triggered and a sense of anger, but I don't want to do that. I want to try to have this conversation with you to understand more of what it is. I basically call it commenting on the process, walks one through to get to the place they would prefer to be.
Okay.
But by acknowledging the surge, yes.
So I can see, you know, this is going to take practice. And, you know, if people could just take away one first step, you know, what would you suggest after everything you've kind of heard so far?
It's a good question. You know, I could ask everybody out there, what is the one thing you want to take away? I do think it's about accepting 100% responsibility for being the person that you would say you want to be. That it would be really contributing to this world in the way you would wish this world to be.
And some of us can just even say, I want to take 50% response, like wherever you can start, right?
You know, it's the Gandhi quote, be the change in the world you wish to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do that. And once I take 100% responsibility for that, I don't give you the power to turn me into the kind of person I would say I don't want to be, the person I don't like. And so I think that kind of being aware, being mindful, being intentional, and setting those intentions is the first step in creating change. One is, I want to change.
Okay.
And then, you know, the 3 steps of change in my model is, I want to change, and this is how I want that change to look. And these are the steps and actions I'm going to take that move me in that direction. So
I love it.
That would be it. I know we've gone on for a while here, and still 143 people here.
Yeah, and I see some people are starting to say thank you so much. I don't know if you can see the chat. Big takeaway: be a respectful person. Even if you don't respect who you're engaging with, that's probably the biggest takeaway, right? Yes. We're 100% responsible for being that respectful person.
And me being respectful doesn't mean I respect you. I'm being respectful because that's the person I want to be.
Say that again.
I don't have to respect you for me to be respectful. I am respectful because that's the person I want to be. You don't turn me into a disrespectful person. And so I don't have to respect you. I'm being respectful because that's my contribution to the big picture.
Yeah, that is, thank you for that wonderful wrap up. I think that was well said. I do want everyone to know that I'm going to put a survey in the chat right now. If you guys can find that, people are saying, thank you so much, spot on. Thank you so much to practice curiosity, right? That's another great point.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have that slide with the song?
Yeah. I don't know if I should try that again.
Don't bother. Don't bother. Thank you to everybody who came to this. Thanks for all the comments. There's no way to keep these comments, is there?
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, maybe it would be great if you could put, you know, some time into making a list of meditation resources. I think that was something that a lot of people might be interested in seeing, or just your version of what you think has helped you.
Well, there are great resources here in Oak Park, that's for sure. The Zen Life Meditation Center is one, zlmc.org. I would highly recommend that. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it's just people, you know, seeking that out first. But that 100% responsibility is awesome. But you want me to try to play the song? I will.
Sure. Hey, Win. I think everyone should give Win a hand. No, really, this end part with the questions and just fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't get it to play. I give up.
All right, forget it. Forget it. So you're just going to put up, okay, so let me just say this then. Thrive is our community mental health center, and we are always trying to provide programs to the community. This Thrive Talk series is one, but providing programs to keep our community healthy is one of our key missions here. And we certainly would appreciate any donations that you can make. We're always in the red. It's just a matter of how in the red we are. And so please, if you can make donations, we'd really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll try this one more time while people are exiting.
Yeah, that's right.
I love how it worked during practice, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just doesn't want to work.
All
Oh,
right.
maybe I can get the song. Nope.
All right. I don't know. Are we staying on at all to review anything with? I mean, we're still live, right? So I should be.
Yeah,
quiet.
I'm gonna stop recording right now.
Okay.